Nobody at the hotel understood Chinese. The millionaire Chinese woman was fuming, until the maid's daughter spoke in perfect Chinese. The Grand Majestic Hotel's gilded halls had seen a century of quiet wealth, but they were not prepared for Madame Lin, a furious Chinese millionaire whose frustration was met with blank stares. Invisible in the chaos was Sarah, a housekeeper, and her 10-year-old daughter, Lily, a little blonde girl with a secret fluency in Mandarin. When Lily bravely translated the woman's desperate words, it was more than an act of kindness. It was the key to a 70-year-old mystery of stolen land and a buried legacy. The powerful men who ran the hotel would soon discover their foundation of lies was about to crumble, all because they underestimated the voice of a child and the power of a truth that refused to stay silent. Just before we dive in, if you like this kind of stories of overcoming adversity and justice, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. Now let's jump back in. Enjoy the story. A little girl held a secret that could bring a powerful hotel to its knees. She watched the wealthy woman shout in a language no one understood. But 10-year-old Lily understood every single word. The Grand Majestic Hotel was more than a building. It was a promise of old-world New York splendor. Sunlight streamed through tall arched windows, glinting off the polished marble floors. A grand chandelier, a galaxy of crystal, hung from the frescoed ceiling. The air smelled of money, fresh lilies, and lemon polish. Through the enormous brass revolving doors spun a constant flow of people. They were men in tailored suits with important places to be. They were women in designer dresses, their jewelry sparkling with casual fire. Each guest was treated with the same flawless, practiced courtesy by the staff in their crisp, navy blue uniforms. Behind the front desk, the atmosphere was less calm. Anna, a 20-year-old junior associate with a perfectly pleasant smile, looked flustered. She was speaking to George, 40 years old, the head concierge. George had a face that seemed permanently etched with polite concern. "I've never seen a request list like this," Anna whispered, tapping her computer screen. "She wants all the white roses removed from the floor. Not just her suite, the entire floor. She says the scent is inauspicious." George adjusted his tie. "Tomlinson is already having the florist replace them with orchids. What else? The thermostat must be set to precisely 22.7 degrees Celsius. Not 22.5, not 23. 22.7. And she has demanded that all housekeeping services be performed by a single, designated maid. No one else is to enter her suite." Anna shook her head. "Who is this woman?" "Her name is Madame Lin," George said, his voice low. "And from what Mr. Davenport has said, she is one of the most important guests we will host this year. Everything must be perfect." At that moment, a sleek black car, silent as a shadow, pulled up to the curb. The doorman, a man built like a monument, sprang to action. He opened the rear door with a flourish. From inside emerged a woman. She appeared to be in her late 60s, with streaks of silver in her perfectly styled black hair. She wore a simple but exquisitely cut silk dress in a shade of deep jade. Her face was a mask of stoic calm, hidden behind large, dark sunglasses. She did not smile. She simply stood for a moment, observing the grand entrance as if judging its worth. Her luggage was a strange mix. 2 modern, high-end suitcases were placed on the curb, but beside them, the driver carefully unloaded a large, antique camphorwood trunk. It was bound with brass fittings and looked as though it had crossed oceans a century ago. "Welcome to the Grand Majestic, ma'am," the doorman said, his voice warm and professional. The woman gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. She then turned to the driver and spoke. The words were sharp, fluid, and completely foreign to the doorman's ears. It was Mandarin Chinese. He smiled blankly, hoping it was a pleasantry. The woman's expression did not change. She gestured to the antique trunk, then toward the hotel lobby, speaking again with an air of firm expectation. Inside, George saw her approach. "She's here," he muttered to Anna. "And she's early. Remember, Anna, smile and be accommodating, no matter what." Anna plastered on her professional smile as the woman arrived at the front desk. "Good afternoon, madam. Welcome to the Grand Majestic. May I have your name, please?" The woman removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and held a deep weariness. She spoke again in Mandarin. Her tone was not harsh, but it was clear she expected to be understood. Anna's smile faltered. I'm so sorry, ma'am. I don't understand. Do you speak any English? Madame Lin's brow furrowed in annoyance. This was a world-class hotel in New York City. How could they not have someone who understood a language spoken by over 1 billion people? She reached into her expensive leather handbag and produced a small, leather-bound notebook. She flipped it open to a page where a name was written in beautiful, flowing English script, Mrs. Lin Jiaowei. She pointed to the name. Ah, yes, Madame Lin, Anna said, her voice filled with relief. She began typing quickly into her computer. We have been expecting you. I have your reservation right here, and... Oh, Anna's face fell. The smile vanished, replaced by a look of quiet panic. Oh dear, it seems there has been a mistake. We have you scheduled to arrive tomorrow, not today. Madame Lin tilted her head. She did not understand the words, but she understood the sudden shift in atmosphere. She understood the look of incompetence. She pointed to her watch, then tapped the counter firmly. She spoke again in Mandarin, her voice gaining a sharp, insistent edge. Anna started speaking slowly and loudly, as if raising her voice would magically create understanding. Your room is for tomorrow, not today. The response was a flash of cold fury in Madame Lin's eyes. She shook her head, pulled out her phone, and found her confirmation email. She held it up for Anna to see. The date was clearly visible, August 27th. Today. The rest of the email was in Chinese characters, a wall of text Anna couldn't penetrate. I see. Anna stammered, her face turning red. There has been a terrible mix-up. My sincerest apologies, Madame Lin. Please, have a seat in our lounge. We will sort this out immediately. We will have a suite ready for you within the hour. Madame Lin did not move. She remained standing at the desk, a pillar of silent, furious dignity. Her expensive luggage and ancient trunk sat beside her, drawing curious glances from other guests. She looked utterly alone, a proud, isolated island in a sea of confused hospitality. Away from the polished glamour of the lobby, the hotel's arteries were plain and functional. Here, the floors were linoleum and the walls were painted a boring beige. Sarah, a 30-year-old housekeeper with tired but kind eyes, was finishing her lunch in the small, crowded break room. Her uniform was neat, but she wore the exhaustion of a long shift like a second skin. Sitting across from her, scribbling in a drawing pad, was her daughter, Lily, 10 years old. Lily was a small girl with straight, honey-blonde hair and bright, curious blue eyes. She was supposed to be at a friend's house, but a last-minute cancellation had forced Sarah to bring her to work for the last hour of her shift. Lily didn't mind. She found the secret life of the hotel fascinating. She knew the names of all the maids, the quickest routes through the service corridors, and that Mr. Henderson in the kitchen always saved her a cookie. The break room door swung open and 2 other maids bustled in, their voices buzzing with the day's gossip. Did you see her? The first one, Maria said. The Chinese lady in the lobby. She looks like royalty, but she's been standing there for an hour. Apparently, they messed up her booking. I heard she's furious, added the second, a woman named Chloe. Keeps talking in Chinese, and nobody knows what she's saying. Mr. Davenport is about to have a meltdown. Sarah sighed, packing up her lunchbox. Poor woman. It's hard enough to travel so far without having problems when you arrive. Lily looked up from her drawing. Why doesn't someone just talk to her in Chinese? She asked, with the simple logic of a child. Chloe laughed. Honey, we're maids in New York, not translators at the UN. None of us speaks Chinese. I do, Lily said, so quietly that only her mother heard. Sarah looked at her daughter. It was true. Lily's father, who had passed away 2 years ago, had been a diplomat. They had lived in Beijing for 4 years, from the time Lily was 3 until she was 7. Lily had soaked up the language like a sponge, speaking it with a fluency that still surprised Sarah. After he died, they had moved back to the States, and this job at the hotel was the only thing keeping them afloat. Lily kept up her Mandarin by watching Chinese cartoons online. That's nice, sweetie, Sarah said, stroking her daughter's hair. She didn't want to get involved. Her job was to be invisible, to clean rooms and follow orders. Getting involved in a guest's problem, especially a VIP's problem, was far above her pay grade. Come on, Lily, Sarah said, standing up. My shift is over. Let's go home. She took Lily's hand and led her out of the break room. They walked down the service corridor toward the staff exit. But to get there, they had to pass a small alcove that overlooked the main lobby. Lily paused, looking down through the decorative screen. She could see Madame Lin perfectly. The woman was no longer standing. She was seated in a large armchair, but she didn't look comfortable. Her back was ramrod straight. Her hands were clenched in her lap. Her face, no longer hidden by sunglasses, was etched with a profound and lonely frustration. As Lily watched, a concierge approached Madame Lin with a tray offering a glass of water. He smiled a wide, empty smile and gestured with the glass. Madame Lin shook her head and spoke, her voice carrying up to the alcove. Her words were rapid and laced with an emotion that Lily recognized instantly. It wasn't just anger. It was desperation. The concierge didn't understand. He just kept smiling and nodding, then backed away as if she were a difficult piece of art. "Mom," Lily whispered, her grip tightening on Sarah's hand. "She's not asking for a drink. She's asking for a telephone. She says she needs to call her son, but her mobile phone isn't working." Sarah looked from Madame Lin's distressed face to her daughter's earnest one. "Lily, it's not our place." "But nobody is helping her," Lily insisted. "They think she's just being difficult, but she's scared. She thinks she's lost." A conflict played out on Sarah's face. Years of training, of being a good employee, told her to walk away. Her job was precarious. She couldn't afford to make waves. But the mother in her, the person in her, saw a woman in distress. And she saw the deep, unwavering empathy in her own child's eyes. Something inside her made a decision. It was a small, quiet, but significant rebellion. "All right," Sarah sighed, her heart starting to beat a little faster. "All right, but you let me do the talking. You just translate. And be polite." They walked out of the service corridor and into the grand lobby. It felt like stepping onto a stage. They were a world away from the glamorous guests. Sarah in her simple maid's uniform, Lily in her jeans and t-shirt, clutching her drawing pad. Several staff members gave them questioning looks. They weren't supposed to be here. Sarah took a deep breath and led Lily toward the lonely figure in the armchair. As they got closer, Madame Lin looked up. Her eyes, filled with frustration, settled on the maid and the little blonde girl. She looked through them, as if they were just part of the furniture. She was preparing for another useless interaction, another smiling face that couldn't understand her. Sarah knelt down slightly, so she was at eye level with the seated woman. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said softly. Madame Lin just stared. Sarah looked at her daughter. "Go on, Lily. Tell her what I said. Tell her we're here to help." Lily took a small step forward. She was a little nervous, but the woman's sadness was stronger than her fear. She looked directly into Madame Lin's eyes, bowed her head slightly in a gesture of respect her father had taught her, and spoke. Her Mandarin was clear, perfect, and flowed with the natural accent of a child who had learned it in the hutongs of Beijing. "Hello, madam. My mother says we would like to help you." The world seemed to stop. The transformation on Madame Lin's face was immediate and stunning. The hard mask of anger and frustration cracked. Her eyes widened in disbelief. A storm of emotions, shock, confusion, and then a tidal wave of immense relief washed over her features. She leaned forward, her gaze locked on this impossible child. A little American girl with blonde hair, speaking the language of her heart. She reached out, her hand trembling slightly. Not for Sarah, but for Lily. She gently took the girl's small hand in her own. Her voice, when she spoke, was barely a whisper. It was thick with unshed tears. You speak Chinese?" Lily nodded, a small, shy smile touching her lips. "Yes," she replied in English, then switched back to Mandarin. "I lived in Beijing for 4 years." The tears in Madame Lin's eyes finally spilled over, tracing paths down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. She just held on to Lily's hand as if it were a lifeline. She looked at Sarah, then back at Lily, and the words began to pour out. It was a flood of explanation, frustration, and worry, all in rapid-fire Mandarin. Lily listened intently, her small face serious as she concentrated on the torrent of words. The few staff members nearby watched in utter bewilderment. The difficult Chinese guest was now holding hands with the maid's daughter, crying and talking a mile a minute. After a few moments, Madame Lin paused, taking a shaky breath. Lily turned to her mother. She says, "Thank heavens," Lily translated, her voice clear and steady. She has been trying to tell everyone that her reservation was changed last week by her son. He sent an email, but maybe it went to the wrong person. She says her phone won't connect to the American network, and she needs to call her son to tell him she's safe. She was very worried. Sarah looked at Madame Lin, and for the first time, she didn't see a demanding VIP. She saw a grandmother, a mother, lost and alone in a foreign country, frightened and frustrated. Her heart went out to her. "Of course," Sarah said, her voice full of warmth. "Please, tell her she can use my phone." When Lily translated this, Madame Lin's face crumpled with gratitude. She took Sarah's cheap mobile phone and dialed a number from memory. The call connected. She began speaking in Mandarin, her voice now calm and reassuring. While she was on the phone, Mr. Davenport, the hotel manager, finally appeared. He was a tall, thin man whose expensive suit couldn't hide his anxious energy. He strode across the lobby, his face a thundercloud. "Sarah, what is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his voice a sharp hiss. "Why are you and your child bothering our guest? You know the rules. Staff are not to interact with guests in the lobby." Before Sarah could stammer an apology, Madame Lin ended her call. She handed the phone back to Sarah with a grateful smile. Then she stood up and faced Mr. Davenport. She spoke in Mandarin, her voice no longer desperate, but filled with a cold, regal authority. She gestured toward Sarah and Lily, then looked at Mr. Davenport with utter contempt. Lily translated without missing a beat. She says, "This woman and her child have shown me more courtesy and competence in 5 minutes than your entire staff has shown in over an hour. They are the only reason I have not yet walked out of your hotel." Mr. Davenport stared, his mouth opening and closing silently. He looked from the formidable Madame Lin to the little blonde girl who had just delivered the verbal slap. His mind struggled to process the scene. The housekeeper who was supposed to be invisible was now at the center of the biggest guest service crisis of the day. Madame Lin spoke again, a short, sharp command. Lily looked at Mr. Davenport. "She says she will only speak through me from now on, and she would like to be shown to her suite." Immediately, the Magnolia Suite was one of the finest in the hotel. It had a spacious living area, a bedroom with a king-sized bed, and a marble bathroom the size of Sarah's entire apartment. Mr. Davenport, now sweating profusely, had personally escorted them up. He had upgraded Madame Lin to the best available room, desperate to make amends. Sarah and Lily stood awkwardly near the door. Their job was done, but Madame Lin had insisted they come with her. Madame Lin surveyed the suite, her expert "I'm missing nothing." She ran a finger over a dusty lampshade, her expression unreadable. She then turned her attention to her luggage, especially the antique camphor trunk. She spoke in Mandarin to Lily. Lily nodded and turned to her mother. "She wants to thank you, Mom. She says she was treated like she was invisible or stupid. You were the first person to see she just needed help." Sarah felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "It was nothing. I'm glad we could help." Madame Lin said something else, her gaze soft as she looked at Lily. "She says I have a gift," Lily translated. "She says a bridge between two worlds is a rare and powerful thing." The older woman then opened her handbag and took out a thick envelope. She tried to press it into Sarah's hands. "No, please, I can't accept that," Sarah said, holding up her hands. It was against hotel policy. It could get her fired. Lily translated, and Madame Lin's expression became stern. She spoke firmly. "She insists," Lily said. "It is not a tip. It is a gift of gratitude. To refuse a gift given from the heart is an insult." Faced with this cultural dilemma, Sarah reluctantly took the envelope. It felt heavy. Just then, Mr. Davenport knocked and entered the suite. He was followed by 2 bellhops who began arranging the luggage. "Is everything to your satisfaction, Madame Lin?" he asked, his voice oozing anxious charm. He looked at Lily, expecting a translation. Madame Lin ignored him completely. She walked over to her antique trunk and ran a hand over its carved lid. She seemed lost in thought. Then she spoke to Lily, her voice much softer now, almost wistful. Lily listened, then turned to Mr. Davenport. "Madame Lin would like my mother to be the only person who services this suite during her stay. She also requests that I am allowed to be here to help her communicate. She says she will compensate my mother and me for our time, separately from the hotel." Mr. Davenport looked like he had swallowed a lemon. A maid's daughter as a personal interpreter for a VIP? It was unheard of. It broke a dozen hotel protocols. But one look at Madame Lin's unyielding face told him he had no choice. She was the guest, and she was clearly very, very wealthy. Losing her business would be a disaster. That is highly irregular, he said through gritted teeth. But for you, Madame Lin, we will make an exception. Sarah, you are temporarily reassigned. Jackson, he said, looking at Lily as if she were a strange new piece of equipment. You will assist her. We will discuss compensation later. He gave a tight smile and backed out of the room, leaving them alone. Once he was gone, the formal atmosphere in the room lifted. Madame Lin let out a long sigh, the tension finally leaving her shoulders. She looked tired, but also determined. She gestured for Sarah and Lily to sit on the plush sofa. She sat opposite them and began to unpack the contents of the camphor trunk. It wasn't filled with clothes. Instead, it held silk-wrapped parcels, old leather-bound books, and yellow documents. She unwrapped one of the parcels to reveal a beautiful porcelain vase, painted with delicate blue peonies. This belonged to my grandmother, she said in Mandarin, her voice thick with memory. Lily translated for her mother. It has been in our family for over 100 years. I could not trust it to a shipping company. It's beautiful, Sarah said sincerely. Everything in this trunk is beautiful, Madame Lin said. And everything is a clue. A piece of a story that was broken long ago. She looked at Lily, her gaze direct and searching. I did not come to New York for a vacation, little one. I came to find something that was stolen from my family. Something that was stolen right here, on this very land. She paused, then continued, her voice dropping to a serious whisper. This hotel, the Grand Majestic, was built on a foundation of lies. And I have come to reclaim the truth. Lily translated the powerful words. Sarah's eyes widened. This was no ordinary guest. This was no simple booking mistake. They had stumbled into something far bigger, a story of history and injustice that was hidden deep within the very walls of the hotel where she cleaned toilets for a living. And somehow, her little girl with the gift of language was now at the very center of it all. The suite was bathed in the soft glow of table lamps. Outside, the lights of Manhattan twinkled like fallen stars. Sarah had gone home hours ago, after promising to return in the morning. Madame Lin had insisted that Lily stay for dinner, which was served in the suite. Now, the room felt less like a hotel suite and more like a historian's office. Documents and old photographs were spread carefully across the large coffee table. Madame Lin, whose first name Lily now knew was Zhao Wei, picked up a faded black and white photograph. It showed a young, strikingly beautiful Chinese woman. She stood proudly in front of a building that was not the Grand Majestic, but an older, more ornate brownstone. She was dressed in a stylish 1940s Western dress, but her bearing was entirely her own. This was my grandmother, Lin Meiling, Zhao Wei said, her voice soft. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, listening intently, translating the story in her mind. She came to America in 1936. She was brilliant, fearless. She built a business empire when women, especially Chinese women, were expected to be silent. Zhao Wei pointed to the building in the photograph. She owned that building, and the one next to it, and the one next to that. She owned this entire block. She had a dream to build a magnificent hotel here, a place that would be a bridge between East and West, just as she was. She fell silent for a moment, her finger tracing the outline of her grandmother's face. But a war came, and with the war came suspicion, fear. Her American business partners, men she trusted, saw an opportunity. They used the anti-Asian sentiment of the time to cheat her. They forged papers, threatened her, and told her she would lose everything if she did not sell to them for pennies on the dollar. Lily felt a knot of anger tighten in her stomach. That's not fair, she whispered in English. Zhao Wei heard the English words and seemed to understand the sentiment. She gave a sad smile. No, it was not fair. In the end, she was forced to flee. She returned to Hong Kong with almost nothing. She lost her property, her dream. The men who cheated her built this hotel on her land. They used some of her architectural plans, but they erased her from the story completely, as if she never existed. She looked up from the photograph, her eyes locking with Lily's. For 70 years, my family has lived with this story. My mother tried to fight, but the records were gone. The system was against her. Now it is my turn. I am the last of my line. I will not let my grandmother's legacy be forgotten. How will you prove it? Lily asked in Mandarin. The proof is hidden somewhere in this hotel, Zhao Wei said, her voice filled with conviction. My grandmother was clever. Before she fled, she hid something. A collection of documents, deeds, and a signed confession from one of the partners who felt guilty. She wrote about it in her journal. She called it her heart box. She gestured to the maps and old blueprints on the table. I have spent years studying her journals, trying to decipher her clues. I believe the heart box is hidden in a secret room, a part of the original building that was not demolished, but sealed away when the new hotel was built around it. Lily looked at the blueprints, her eyes wide with excitement. It was like a treasure hunt. A secret room. Yes, Zhao Wei said. And finding it is why I am here. It is why I needed a suite in this specific wing of the hotel. It is why I could not wait until tomorrow. She paused, studying the young girl before her. This is a difficult, perhaps dangerous task. Your manager, Mr. Davenport, I do not trust him. His grandfather was one of the men who cheated my grandmother. Lily gasped. Mr. Davenport's grandfather? Yes. The apple does not fall far from the tree. He will not want me to succeed. That is why I must be careful. And it is why I need you, Lily. I need your ears. I need your voice. But I cannot ask a child to put herself in danger. Lily didn't hesitate. I'm not scared, she said bravely. What they did was wrong. We have to make it right. Zhao Wei looked at the fierce determination in the little girl's blue eyes. For the first time since she had arrived, a genuine, warm smile spread across her face. I believe we will, she said. I believe we will. The next day, Sarah arrived for her special assignment, feeling nervous. Her world of cleaning carts and fresh linens had been turned upside down. She found Lily and Madame Lin already bent over the blueprints, deep in discussion. The original building plans should be in the hotel archives, Zhao Wei was saying in Mandarin. If we can compare them to the current layout, we might find a space that is unaccounted for. The archives are in the basement, Sarah offered, having overheard Lily's translation. But it's kept locked. Only senior staff have a key. Zhao Wei looked at her. Your Mr. Davenport would never grant us permission to look. But the head of maintenance, a man named Sal, he is a kind man, Sarah said, thinking aloud. He has a master key to all the service rooms. He's worked here for 30 years. He knows every secret of this building. An idea began to form. Later that afternoon, Sarah accidentally bumped into Sal in the service hallway. She carried a small box of homemade cookies. Sal, just the man I was looking for, she said with a friendly smile. Lily baked these and insisted I bring you some. She says thank you for the donut you gave her last week. Sal, a large man with a gentle face, beamed. She's a sweet kid. Tell her it was my pleasure. As he took a cookie, Sarah sighed dramatically. It's been a strange couple of days. I'm on a special assignment with that new guest, Madame Lin. Ah, the Chinese lady. Heard she was giving everyone a headache. She's actually very nice once you can understand her, Sarah said. She's very interested in the hotel's history. She was asking me about the old building that was here before the Grand Majestic. You've been here the longest. Do you remember any stories about it? Sal's eyes lit up. He loved talking about the hotel's history. Oh, sure. They say when they built this place, they didn't tear down everything. They built right over some of the old foundation. There are all sorts of sealed-off crawl spaces and old storerooms down in the sub-basement. Full of junk from the 50s, most of it. Fascinating, Sarah said, her heart beating faster. Madame Lin would love to see something like that. She's interested in the original blueprints, even. The blueprints are in the archives, Sal said, shaking his head. Davenport keeps that place locked up tighter than a drum. Says it's for insurance purposes. Sarah looked disappointed. Oh, that's a shame. She would have been so thrilled. Sal looked at Sarah's crestfallen face. He looked at the cookie box. He thought of the sweet little girl who had baked for him. He glanced down the empty corridor. Tell you what, he said, lowering his voice. I have to do a systems check in the basement this evening. Around 10. The night shift is lazy. Nobody will be around. If your guest happens to be down there, I might just have the wrong key on my ring for a minute or two. Sarah could have hugged him. Sal, thank you. That is so kind. Don't mention it, he grumbled, but he was smiling. And don't tell Davenport. That night, after the hotel had settled into a quiet hum, Sarah, Lily, and Zhao Wei took a service elevator to the basement. It was a different world downstairs. A maze of dimly lit corridors, humming pipes, and the faint smell of bleach. They found Sal, who, with a theatrical wink, fumbled with his keys before opening the heavy door to the archives. He stood guard outside while they slipped in. The room was cold and smelled of old paper. Rows of metal shelves were crammed with dusty boxes. Flat filing cabinets lined one wall. "We must be quick," Zhao Wei whispered. They worked in silence, their flashlight beams cutting through the gloom. Sarah searched boxes labeled renovations. Zhao Wei pulled out heavy, rolled-up blueprints. Lily, being small, squeezed behind a row of shelves and found a collection of old leather ledgers. "I found something," Lily called out softly. She pulled out a thick book. It wasn't a ledger. It was a journal. The cover was worn, and the handwriting inside was elegant, a mix of English and Chinese characters. Zhao Wei rushed to her side. She took the book with trembling hands. "Mailings," she breathed. It was her grandmother's handwriting. This was another journal, one she had never seen before. They didn't have time to read it. They heard Sal give a soft cough from the hallway. A signal. "We have to go," Sarah urged. Zhao Wei looked at the journal. She couldn't leave it here. It was too important. With a decisive nod, she tucked the large book under her coat. It was a huge risk. If they were caught, it would be considered theft. They slipped out of the archives, locked the door behind them, and thanked a nervous-looking Sal. As they hurried back to the elevator, none of them noticed the small, dome-shaped security camera high in the corner of the corridor, its tiny red light blinking with silent, steady observation. Back in the safety of the Magnolia suite, the air was electric with nervous energy. Zhao Wei laid the heavy journal on the desk with reverent hands. Its leather cover was cracked with age, and the pages within were brittle. She, Sarah, and Lily huddled around it as Zhao Wei gently opened it. The pages were filled with her grandmother's elegant script, a mix of Chinese characters and English phrases. There were sketches of building designs, notes on business dealings, and pressed flowers between the pages. But it was the personal entries that held them captive. "Listen to this," Zhao Wei said, her voice a low murmur as she translated a passage for Sarah. October 1950. "The wolves are circling. Davenport Sr. and Phillips smile to my face, but I see the greed in their eyes. They use the political climate as a weapon, whispering that I am a communist sympathizer because I send money home to my family. They think a woman, a Chinese woman, is easy to scare." She turned a few more pages, her finger tracing the faded ink. "Here, I have made my preparations. They can steal my property, but they cannot steal my truth. The Phoenix Wing will remain my secret. I have sealed it not just with brick and mortar, but with a puzzle. They are simple men. They will never solve it. It will wait for someone with a clever mind and a pure heart." "The Phoenix Wing," Sarah breathed. "That must be the name of the secret room." "It must be," Zhao Wei agreed. She found a page with a hand-drawn sketch. It wasn't a proper blueprint, but a partial map of the hotel's 5th floor, where they were currently staying. One section of the floor was drawn with thicker lines, and within it was a space that didn't exist on the modern hotel layout. In the corner of this space, her grandmother had drawn a small, elegant phoenix. "It's here," Lily said, her small finger pointing to the drawing. "It has to be on this floor." Their excitement was cut short by a sharp knock on the door. Sarah's heart jumped into her throat. It was nearly midnight. She opened the door a crack to see Mr. Davenport standing in the hallway. His face was pale, and his usual anxious energy had been replaced by a cold, hard anger. He was not alone. 2 large security guards stood behind him. "Sarah, a word, please." "In the hall," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried a distinct menace. Sarah stepped into the hallway, pulling the door closed behind her. "Yes, Mr. Davenport." His polite mask was gone. "Do not play games with me," he hissed. "I have spent the last hour reviewing security footage. I saw you, your daughter, and Madame Lin entering the archives with Sal. What were you doing in a restricted area?" Sarah's mind raced. Madame Lin is very interested in the hotel's history. Sal was kind enough to show her some of the older. At 11 o'clock at night, Davenport cut her off. "And what did you take from the archives?" "I saw Madame Lin carrying something bulky under her coat when you left." Sarah's blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about." "This is your one and only warning," Davenport said, stepping closer. "Your special assignment is to keep our guest happy. That means translating for her, bringing her tea, and smiling. It does not mean helping her conduct some private investigation into my family's hotel. You are a maid, Sarah. Do not forget your place. One more misstep, and you will be out on the street. And I will make sure you never work in this city again. Is that understood?" The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Sarah could only nod, unable to speak. "Good," he said, his composure returning. "Now go back inside, and remember what I said." He turned and walked away, the security guards falling in step behind him. Sarah leaned against the wall, her legs trembling. She had a daughter to support. This job, as tiring as it was all they had. She took a deep breath and went back into the suite. Zhao Hui and Lily looked at her, their faces filled with concern. "He knows," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "He saw us on the cameras. He threatened to fire me." Zhao Hui's expression hardened. "He is a coward, like his grandfather. He uses threats because he is afraid. I could lose everything," Sarah whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Lily ran to her, wrapping her small arms around her mother's waist. "It's my fault, Mom. I'm sorry." "No, sweetie, it's not your fault," Sarah said, hugging her daughter tightly. "It's not your fault that people do bad things." Zhao Hui came and placed a comforting hand on Sarah's shoulder. "He will not fire you," she said with absolute certainty. "Not yet. He cannot afford to make me angry. He is walking a tightrope. He wants to stop us, but he also wants my business. For now, that gives us an advantage. But we must be much more careful." The next morning, the tension in the hotel was palpable. Word had spread among the staff that Sarah had been given a special role, and whispers followed her down the corridors. Some were envious, others suspicious. The other maids, who had once been her friends, now looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and resentment. During a brief trip to the staff locker room, Sarah overheard Chloe, the maid from the break room, talking to another housekeeper. "I don't get it," Chloe said, her voice dripping with disdain. "She lets her kid run around the hotel, and suddenly she's the manager's pet. It's not right. Some of us have worked here for 10 years and still have to clean up after sick guests." Sarah ignored them, her face a neutral mask, but the words stung. She felt more alone than ever, caught between the world of the staff and the secret mission of her guest. Later that day, 2 new guests checked into the suite directly across the hall from Madame Lin's. They were a stylish, professional-looking couple in their 40s. The man, who introduced himself as Mr. Peters, was handsome and charming. The woman, Ms. Vance, was sharp and observant. They told the front desk they were architectural historians writing a feature on New York's grand hotels. Lily encountered them in the hallway as she was bringing a pot of tea to the suite. "Well, hello there," Mr. Peters said, his smile a little too bright. "And who might you be? You seem a bit young to be working here." "I'm helping a guest," Lily said politely. "Oh, you must be the little translator for the Chinese lady," Ms. Vance said, her eyes scanning Lily with an unnerving intensity. "How fascinating. She must have so many interesting stories. Is she enjoying her stay?" "Yes, thank you," Lily said, feeling a strange sense of unease. She quickly excused herself and slipped into Zhao Hui's suite. "There are new people across the hall," she announced. "They say they're historians, but they asked a lot of questions about you. They knew I was your translator." Zhao Hui went still. She moved to the peephole of her door and watched as the couple unlocked their suite. Her body tensed. She stepped back from the door, her face grim. "They are not historians," she said, her voice low and hard. "The man, his name is not Peters. It is Phillips. His grandfather was Warren Phillips, another of the men who betrayed my grandmother. The wolves have sent their pup to watch me." The danger was no longer a story from the past. It was here. It was breathing the same air, sleeping in the same hallway. The treasure hunt had suddenly become very real, and Lily realized, with a child's clear-eyed fear, that they were not the only ones looking for the treasure. The other side was looking too, and they would do anything to make sure it was never, ever found. With the arrival of Mr. Phillips and Ms. Vance, a new, colder tension settled over the 5th floor. Zhao Hui became intensely cautious, refusing to leave her suite and speaking only in hushed tones. She kept the curtains drawn and began double-checking the lock on her door every hour. The discovery of her grandmother's journal was a triumph, but it also made her a target. She knew it contained the key, and so, she suspected, did her new neighbors. She and Lily spent hours poring over the journal's pages. It was a slow, painstaking process. Mei Ling's writing was a mix of practical notes and poetic, sometimes cryptic, reflections. "Here," Zhao Wei said one afternoon, pointing to a passage. The phoenix guards the entrance, but only a dragon can open the door. It sounds like a riddle. Lily thought for a moment. A phoenix and a dragon. They're important symbols, right? Very, Zhao Wei confirmed. In our culture, they represent balance. The emperor and the empress. Power and grace. She looked at the sketch of the phoenix wing again, tapping the small phoenix symbol her grandmother had drawn. This must be the phoenix that guards the entrance. But what is the dragon? Their investigation was confined to the suite. Zhao Wei knew that Mr. Davenport and his new allies across the hall were watching their every move. Any attempt to explore the fifth floor would be noticed immediately. They were prisoners in their luxurious cage. The strain began to show on Sarah. She performed her duties in the suite with her usual quiet efficiency, but her face was etched with worry. She felt the hostile stares of her former colleagues whenever she left the fifth floor. She saw the way Mr. Davenport tracked her movements. She was terrified of losing her job, but she was also fiercely protective of Zhao Wei and the quest for justice. Her simple life had become complicated, and she felt herself being pulled deeper into a story she didn't fully understand. One afternoon, while Zhao Wei was resting, Sarah sent Lily downstairs to the hotel gift shop to buy a newspaper. As Lily was waiting for the elevator in the grand lobby, she saw Mr. Phillips and Ms. Vance talking with Mr. Davenport near the concierge desk. They weren't speaking like guests to a manager. They were huddled together, their voices low and urgent. They looked like co-conspirators. Lily quickly hid behind a large potted palm, her heart thumping. She couldn't hear every word, but she caught snippets of their conversation. No direct evidence, Phillips was saying. But the old woman is looking for something. We need to know what she's found. My security team is monitoring her, Davenport replied, his voice tight with frustration. But I can't just break into her suite. She's a high-profile guest. We need to escalate this, Ms. Vance said, her voice sharp as glass. We need to get inside that room. Find out what she knows. There's too much at stake. If she finds the... Her voice dropped, and Lily couldn't hear the last word. Lily slipped away before they could see her, her mind racing. They were planning something. They wanted to get into the suite. She ran back upstairs and burst into the room, her face pale. They're going to try to get in, she explained breathlessly, recounting what she had overheard. Zhao Wei listened calmly, her expression hardening. I expected this. They are becoming desperate. She walked over to the antique camphor trunk and opened it. From beneath a pile of silks, she removed a small, exquisitely carved wooden box. She opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a jade pendant. It was shaped like a dragon, its body coiled and intricate, a tiny pearl clutched in its claws. The jade was a deep, luminous green. The dragon, Lily whispered in awe. My grandmother managed to save one half of a pair, Zhao Wei explained. This dragon was hers. Its mate, the phoenix, was a gift to her most trusted friend and business partner, a man named James Thompson. He was the third partner, the one who my grandmother believed felt guilty about the betrayal. She paused. According to her journal, the phoenix pendant is the key to the secret room. But where is it? Sarah asked. I do not know, Zhao Wei admitted. It was lost when Thompson passed away decades ago. Finding it is our next task. But first, she said, her eyes turning to the door, we must protect what we already have. The threat from across the hall forced them to act. They couldn't wait for the perfect moment to explore the fifth floor. They had to create one. We need a distraction, Zhao Wei said that evening. Something that will draw everyone's attention away from this floor for at least an hour. Sarah, who knew the hotel's routines better than anyone, had an idea. The annual Heritage Society Gala is tomorrow night. It's the biggest event of the year. The entire hotel will be in chaos. The main ballroom is on the second floor, and all senior staff, including Mr. Davenport, will be there. Security will be focused on the event. It was the perfect opportunity. The following night, the Grand Majestic was a whirlwind of activity. Women in glittering gowns and men in tuxedos filled the lobby. The sound of a live orchestra drifted up from the ballroom. On the fifth floor, however, it was eerily quiet. Zhao Wei, Sarah, and Lily waited until the gala was in full swing. Then, armed with a flashlight and the blueprint sketch from the journal, they slipped out of the suite. The hallway was empty. A single, sleepy-looking security guard was stationed by the elevators, but he was engrossed in a sports game on his phone. Following the sketch, they made their way to a section of the corridor between the Magnolia Suite and the Orchid Suite. According to the current hotel layout, it was just a solid wall. But according to Mei Ling's drawing, this was where the entrance to the Phoenix Wing should be. The wall was covered in elegant, silk-screened wallpaper. They ran their hands over it, searching for any seam or hidden switch. They tapped gently, listening for a hollow sound. Nothing. Maybe the riddle is the clue, Lily whispered, recalling the words from the journal. The Phoenix guards the entrance. Her eyes scanned the hallway. The decor was classic and Western, with one exception. At the end of the corridor, in a recessed alcove, stood a large, antique Chinese vase on a pedestal. It had been part of the hotel's decor for decades, a lone nod to Oriental aesthetics. Lily walked towards it. The vase was painted with intricate scenes of mountains and clouds. And there, woven into the design, almost hidden among the clouds, was a small, beautifully painted phoenix. I found it, Lily breathed. The phoenix. She reached out and pressed a finger gently onto the painted bird. For a second, nothing happened. Then, they heard a soft click, like an old lock releasing. A section of the wallpapered wall beside the alcove shifted, revealing a thin, dark opening. It wasn't a door, but a panel that had swung inward. Heart pounding, Sarah shone the flashlight into the opening. It revealed a narrow, dust-filled passageway. At the end of the passage was a solid wooden door. They squeezed through the panel and made their way to the door. It was old and heavy, with a small, ornate keyhole in the center. But the keyhole wasn't a normal shape. It was carved in the silhouette of a bird. A phoenix. We need the phoenix key, Zhao Wei said, her voice filled with a new urgency. The phoenix pendant. Their discovery had hit a dead end. They had found the entrance, but they could not open the final door. Disappointed, they slipped back out into the hallway, closing the secret panel behind them. As they retreated to their suite, a new figure emerged from the shadows near the service staircase. It was Chloe, the resentful maid. She had been watching them. She had seen the secret panel open and close. A greedy, calculating look entered her eyes. She had seen the wealthy Chinese woman, the maid, and her daughter. She had no idea what they were doing, but she knew it was a secret. And she knew that secrets, in a place like the Grand Majestic, could be valuable. The discovery of the secret panel was a double-edged sword. It proved Zhao Wei's theories were correct, but the phoenix-shaped lock was an impassable barrier. A profound sense of frustration settled in the suite. They were so close, yet the final piece of the puzzle remained out of reach. Chloe's betrayal came sooner than they could have imagined. The next morning, she didn't report to her cleaning duties. Instead, she went directly to the office of Mr. Davenport. She was ushered in by his secretary and found him sitting behind his large mahogany desk, looking stressed. Standing by the window, looking out over the city, was Mr. Phillips. "What is it?" Davenport asked impatiently. "I'm in the middle of something." "I have information," Chloe said, her voice a mixture of nerves and arrogance. "About your special guest, Madame Lin." Phillips turned from the window, his interest piqued. "Last night," Chloe began, "I saw her. With the maid, Sarah, and her little girl. They were sneaking around the fifth-floor corridor. They opened a secret door in the wall." Davenport sat bolt upright. Phillips took a step forward. "A secret door? Where?" "Near the big Chinese vase," Chloe explained. "A piece of the wall just swung open. They went inside for a few minutes, and then came back out." Davenport and Phillips exchanged a look of alarm. The legend of the sealed wing was something their families had dismissed as a fanciful myth for decades, a ghost story. Now, it seemed, the ghost was real. "Thank you, Chloe," Phillips said, his voice smooth as silk. He reached into his wallet and pulled out several $100 bills, pressing them into her hand. "This is for your trouble. Your loyalty to this hotel is noted. You may go." Chloe's eyes widened at the sight of the money. She nodded and quickly left the office, her conscience soothed by the crisp feel of the bills. Once she was gone, the calm in the room evaporated. "She found it," Phillips said, his voice tight with disbelief. "After all these years, she actually found it." "What do we do?" Davenport asked, his face pale. "If she gets in there, if the stories are true, if the documents are real." "She won't," Phillips said, his expression turning to ice. "She can't. Not without the key." He began to pace the room. "But we don't know what else she's found. That maid and her child have given her access to the entire hotel. We need to know what's in that suite. We need to know what's in that journal I'm sure she's hiding. He stopped and looked at Davenport. Tonight, the hotel is hosting a charity dinner for the mayor. You will make sure Madame Lin is invited as the guest of honor. It's an invitation she cannot refuse. While she is downstairs, someone will search her room thoroughly. Later that day, a formal, hand-delivered invitation arrived at the Magnolia Suite. Mr. Davenport requested the honor of Madame Lin's presence at a private dinner with the mayor. Zhao Wei knew it was a trap. They want me out of the room, she said simply. Then you can't go, Sarah said, alarmed. On the contrary, Zhao Wei replied with a cunning look in her eye. I must go, but the journal will not be here when they search. That evening, Zhao Wei dressed in an elegant, floor-length gown of dark silk. Before she left, she handed the precious journal to Sarah. Keep this safe. Do not leave it in your locker. Take it home with you. Sarah nodded, tucking the heavy book into her oversized tote bag, her heart hammering against her ribs. As Zhao Wei was escorted downstairs by a grim-faced Mr. Davenport, Sarah and Lily left through the staff exit. The weight of the journal in Sarah's bag felt like a ton of bricks. It was more than a book. It was the heart of a 70-year-old injustice, and she was its temporary guardian. The search of the suite was brutal. 2 men from Davenport's security team, working under Phillips's direction, turned the room upside down. They were professionals, swift and silent. They emptied drawers, rifled through luggage, and checked under every cushion. They found nothing of consequence. The journal was gone. All they managed to do was create a scene of violation, a silent, menacing message. When Zhao Wei returned to her ransacked suite late that night, she surveyed the damage with a calm, cold fury. They had found nothing, but they had declared war. The next few days were a stalemate. Zhao Wei and her allies had the knowledge of the secret room, but no way to enter it. Phillips and Davenport knew about the room, but couldn't get in either, and they couldn't find the evidence they so desperately sought. The 5th floor of the Grand Majestic became a quiet battleground of watchful eyes and silent suspicion. The key, they all knew, was the lost Phoenix pendant. We must find out what happened to James Thompson, Zhao Wei said, her determination unwavering. He was the only one of the 3 partners with a conscience. He is our only hope. The task fell to Sarah. During her breaks, she would go to the public library, her face buried in old newspapers and city records on the library's microfilm machines. She searched for any mention of James Thompson, his family, his business dealings after the hotel was built. It was like searching for a needle in a haystack of history. Finally, after days of fruitless searching, she found it. A small obituary in a 1978 edition of the New York Times. James Thompson had passed away at the age of 75. He was survived by one daughter, Eleanor Thompson Price. A quick search of modern records revealed that Eleanor, now in her late 80s, was still alive. She lived in a quiet retirement community upstate. It was a long shot, a desperate hope. Would this elderly woman even know the story? And if she did, would she be willing to help them betray her own father's legacy? With a deep breath, Zhao Wei picked up the phone and dialed. An aide answered, and Zhao Wei, using Lily as her clear-voiced interpreter, explained who she was and why she was calling. She asked to speak with Mrs. Price, saying it was a matter of great importance concerning her father and the Grand Majestic Hotel. They were told to wait. The minutes stretched into an eternity. Finally, a new voice came on the line. It was thin, but clear and steady. It was Eleanor. I have been waiting for this call for 50 years, the old woman said, her voice trembling with a lifetime of held-in emotion. I knew this day would come. My father, he was never proud of what they did. It haunted him his entire life. Over the next hour, Eleanor told them her story. She remembered Lin Meiling. She remembered her as a beautiful, powerful woman who was a frequent guest in their home before the war. She remembered the arguments between her father and his partners. Most importantly, she remembered the pendant. After your grandmother fled, my father tried to send her a letter of confession, Eleanor explained. It was returned, unopened. He kept it, along with the Phoenix pendant he was meant to give her. He told me the whole story before he died. He said the pendant was a key, but he never said to what. He made me promise that if anyone from the Lin family ever came looking for the truth, I would help them. It was his dying wish to clear his conscience. Tears streamed down Zhao Wei's face as she listened to Lily's translation. After so many years of silence, here was the confirmation she had prayed for. The pendant, Zhao Wei asked, her voice thick with hope. Do you still have it? There was a pause on the other end of the line. Yes, Eleanor said softly. It is in a safe deposit box at my bank. It is all I have left of him. But his wish was clear. It belongs to you. The next day, a small, insured package arrived at the hotel. Inside, nestled in a velvet box, was the phoenix pendant. It was the perfect mate to Zhao Wei's dragon, carved from the same luminous green jade. It was more than a piece of jewelry. It was the key to unlocking the past. That night, under the cover of the hotel's quiet late-night hours, they returned to the secret panel. With trembling hands, Zhao Wei took the phoenix pendant and inserted it into the phoenix-shaped keyhole on the hidden door. It fit perfectly. She turned it, and with a deep, groaning sound of wood against wood, the door swung open. The air that wafted out was cool and musty, thick with the smell of time itself. Sarah shone her flashlight into the darkness, and what it revealed took their breath away. It was a suite of rooms, completely sealed off from the modern hotel. And it was perfect. Dust lay thick on every surface, but underneath, it was a masterpiece of 1940s design, a stunning fusion of Eastern and Western styles. There were silk wall coverings painted with cherry blossoms, carved rosewood screens, and elegant Art Deco furniture. On the walls hung formal family portraits of Zhao Wei's ancestors. And there, over a grand fireplace, was a large, magnificent portrait of Lin Mei herself, looking out with the same proud, intelligent eyes as her granddaughter. She was here, Zhao Wei whispered, tears in her eyes as she touched the frame of the portrait. This was her heart, her dream. They explored the room like archaeologists discovering a pharaoh's tomb. On a writing desk, they found a stack of Mei Ling's business stationery and a pen, as if she had just stepped out for a moment. But it was behind her portrait that they found what they were looking for. A small wall safe was hidden there. Zhao Wei's fingers trembled as she entered the combination, a sequence of numbers from her grandmother's journal. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside was a single, large lacquered box. The heart box. She lifted it out and placed it on the desk. With bated breath, she opened the lid. It was filled with documents. Original property deeds in her grandmother's name. Forged transfer documents with her grandmother's signature clumsily copied. And on top of it all, a handwritten, signed letter from James Thompson. It was his confession, a detailed account of the conspiracy, naming Davenport Sr. and Warren Phillips as the architects of the fraud. They had it. The undeniable, irrefutable proof. The truth, sealed away for 70 years, was finally free. Armed with the contents of the heart box, Zhao Wei's lawyer moved quickly. An emergency petition was filed with the court, and a meeting was demanded with the board of directors of the Grand Majestic's parent company. The board, faced with a brewing legal and public relations nightmare, had no choice but to agree. The meeting took place in the hotel's most opulent conference room, a space paneled in dark wood and hung with oil paintings of stern-faced men. The board members, a collection of wealthy, powerful individuals, sat around a long, polished table. Mr. Davenport and Mr. Phillips were also present, their faces grim and defiant. Zhao Wei entered the room not as a guest, but as a warrior. She was flanked by her legal team, with Sarah and Lily right behind her. Lily, in her simple dress, looked small and out of place, but her presence was non-negotiable. She was the voice of this fight. I assume you have reviewed the evidence my lawyers have provided. Zhao Wei began, her voice calm and steady, with Lily translating each powerful sentence. An older man, the chairman of the board, cleared his throat. We have, and while the documents are compelling, they relate to events that took place a very long time ago. Injustice does not have an expiration date, Zhao Wei countered. She laid out the contents of the hard box on the table for all to see. The original deeds, the forgeries, the confession. My grandmother, Lin Mei, was the rightful owner of the land this hotel stands on. She was defrauded by your company's founders, including your grandfather, Mr. Davenport, and yours, Mr. Phillips. Davenport slammed his hand on the table. This is a baseless accusation, a shakedown based on a fantasized story from a senile, old woman. Before Zhao Wei could respond, the conference room doors opened. A frail, elderly woman entered, leaning on a cane. It was Eleanor Thompson Price. It is not a fantasy, Eleanor said, her voice shaking but clear. I am here to confirm that every word Madame Lin says is true. My father confessed everything to me. He lived his life in shame. The Grand Majestic Hotel was built on theft and racism. The boardroom fell into a stunned silence. The testimony of a founder's daughter was a blow they could not deflect. Zhao Wei then stated her terms. They were not a request. They were a demand. First, a public apology and the full restoration of her grandmother's name to the hotel's history. Second, the Phoenix Wing was to be preserved as a permanent cultural heritage site. And third, the 25% ownership stake that was stolen from her grandmother was to be returned to the Lin family trust. The room erupted in protest. But Zhao Wei stood firm. These terms are not negotiable. Either you agree to restore what was stolen, or we will see you in court. We will let a jury, and the world, see these documents. The chairman looked at the damning evidence. He looked at the unshakable resolve on Zhao Wei's face. He looked at the faces of his fellow board members and saw their crumbling confidence. The fight was over. A vote was called. One by one, the board members voted in favor of the settlement. The final tally was nearly unanimous. Mr. Davenport was fired on the spot. He and Phillips left the room in disgrace, their family's long-held secret finally exposed to the light. Zhao Wei had won. Her grandmother's legacy was finally, after 70 long years, reclaimed. In the weeks that followed, the Grand Majestic Hotel began a profound transformation. Under Zhao Wei's guidance as a new part owner, the hotel started to become the place her grandmother had always dreamed of. The official history was rewritten. A magnificent bronze plaque honoring Lin Meiling as the hotel's visionary founder was installed in the main lobby. The Phoenix Wing was beautifully restored and opened to the public, a museum in the heart of the hotel, telling the story of its true origins. It became the hotel's most celebrated feature. Sarah's life changed beyond recognition. Zhao Wei, recognizing her courage and integrity, offered her a new position. She was no longer a housekeeper. She was appointed as the curator of the Phoenix Wing, a respected manager with a salary that meant she would never have to worry about rent again. And Lily, the little girl with the gift of language, became the hotel's youngest star. She spent her afternoons after school in the Phoenix Wing, helping her mother and charming visitors with her fluent Mandarin and her incredible story. Zhao Wei established a full college scholarship fund in Lily's name, ensuring that her future would be as bright as her spirit. One crisp autumn afternoon, Tiana stood with Zhao Wei in the restored Phoenix Wing, looking at the portrait of Lin Meiling. The room was filled with soft light and the quiet murmurs of appreciative visitors. She would be so proud of you, Sarah said softly. She would be proud of us all, Zhao Wei corrected her, placing a grateful hand on Sarah's shoulder. She then knelt down to look Lily in the eye. And especially you, little one. You were the key that unlocked everything. Not the pendant. You. Your voice. Lily smiled, a wide, happy smile. She looked up at the portrait of the formidable woman who had started it all. She felt a connection, a kinship across the decades. A story that had been lost in silence had been found again, all because one person had stopped to listen. And in that simple act of listening, a great injustice was finally made right. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive stories.